Bless up, my viewers and my sub. Welcome back to another upload. So right now, my viewers and my sub, the FLA recover millions in legal costs following court ruling. The Firearm Licensing Authority, FLA, said it is to recover millions of dollars in legal costs from applicants and firearm holders who lost cases filed against the FLA to reverse the decision of the board. Both the Supreme Court and the Court Appeal have ruled these individuals pay the legal costs of the FLA. A release from the organization stated the most recent decision came from the Court of Appeal in a case brought by Robert Ivy, whose license were revoked in 2017 after an extensive review and investigation by the FLA of persons of questionable character who had obtained firearm license. The FLA release said it was identified that Ivy had acquired a firearm license although he had a previous conviction in a foreign state and was deported to Jamaica. Furthermore, the Court of Appeal in its judgment stated that Ivy's decision to challenge the revocation of his license by the FLA was misguided. The FLA in their release said the organization has incurred millions in legal fees to defend cases brought against it and therefore will use all efforts to recover expenses paid for a legal representative. The recent ruling of the court support the FLA's commitment to conduct fair, transparent, and detailed investigations for all applicants and holders and validate the process for denying or revoking license. The FLA release state the authorities therefore wishes to encourage applicants, prospective applicants and holders to visit www.fla.jamaica.jm or our social media platform on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter to keep abreast of the policies and requirements of the FLA and the general consideration and stipulations within the Firearm Act, the FLA said in their release. Some of viewers and my sub, the FLA, you don't know, sir, the Firearm License Act where persons can go and get licensed firearm and them little thing. But right now you have some little crook a road where I get licensed firearm when you're supposed to get it. But anyway, leave your thoughts in the comments down below in the comment section.
The light is that Jamaica is one of the first countries that has started to prepare for transitioning from donor fund. Jamaica has really made a substantial progress. For me, one of the biggest achievements of the response is the adoption in 2017 of treat all policy. Means that every Jamaican living with HIV is receiving free of charge from the government of Jamaica antiretroviral treatment.
There is the feel that the public education in respect of HIV/AIDS has waned over time. What's the plan?
Public education requires funding, and we have been doing public education. I think there was a shift in public education when we had treat all being implemented to persons living with HIV, and there may have been a small fall off in our prevention voice. But our prevention voice has always been there. I think there has to be a wider conversation in prevention, and not just about condom use, but we have to look at wider sexual practices. We have to enable our youth and empower our youth to be able to make informed decisions. And through the Ministry of Education and Youth, they do have the health and family life education that has started within our schools, but that has to be done on a more tangible and wide-based setting in terms of going to the community. So yes, you're hearing it at schools. Yes, you're hearing it on the media. Yes, you're seeing billboards and you're seeing the buses. But the discussion at the community level needs to be pushed, because we're not just speaking about prevention. We're speaking about stigma and discrimination. We're speaking about disclosure. We're speaking about treatment. There are several arms and issues within the HIV response that need to be passed on to our community, not just our children, not just the persons who can read and write, but everybody along the spectrum. And it has to be.
I may have to disagree with you, though, in respect of hearing and seeing the messages. I don't see that level of emphasis, again, on the matter of HIV/AIDS prevention and condom use, for example. Am I wrong, Candace?
I think you're comparing eras, and you're fair in your stance. The truth is, in years gone by, we had a lot of resources, way more resources available for us to be, for example, every prime time you would be hearing ads around condom use and, HIV awareness. We don't have that level of resources anymore. Plus, there were...
But what we do have are things like social media. The same media on which these group of people, 15 to 24, can very well be targeted and can be reached.
Yes, and I was coming there, and I must tell you, you have to go follow us, Just Info on Facebook and on
That's
YouTube
you.
and everything.
That's
yes,
you.
And
though.
I agree.
There's so many other players in this very important.
We are in agreement. I'm saying there used to be way more players in the HIV response before, way more organizations at the community level. Other NGOs were active, and with the drying up of the donor funding, or with the streamlining of the funding, a lot of persons have really closed their whole voice to it. And so we keep saying, we need other partners. HIV has not gone anywhere. We need to still be having the conversations as if we were in the early 2000s.
Why has the funding dried up?
We are a middle-income country. When donors come to Jamaica and we are pushing our Benz and Beamers, it shows to them that really, hold on, let us look at the data. But the World Bank says we are a middle-income country based on their assessment. And so the money needs to go to persons who have the greatest need. And so it has it has reduced our funding and shifted the donor funding from the country to other countries that they believe have a greater need. That's primarily the situation. And so there's a push to the government of Jamaica to use its middle income status to make more resources. That's where our voices have been in the last 5 years, looking to Dr. Rob, that the government really needs to use some of its middle income resources and direct some of those funds to the HIV program and what they're doing in terms of HIV investment in the country, not just for their rolling out of their portfolio, but to support civil society organizations to maintain the momentum.
Is there any light at the end of this tunnel?
The light is that Jamaica is one of the first countries that has started to prepare for transitioning from donor funding. In 2017, a transition readiness assessment has been completed, and in last year, a transition and sustainability draft plan has been developed, which outlines the main risks that the government will face if they do not address this main risk with specific actions, and what these actions and activities will cost. Then there will be a disruption in services, and we'll lose the gains that we have through the years achieved with the donor support. So I think that's the light in the tunnel, that the government...
Are you saying though that we are running the risk of having more funds cut?
Yes, we are facing this reality. Well, it will not be coming like in the next 3 to 6 years. That's the horizon that the Global Fund to fight AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria, that is one of the biggest donors, together with PEPFAR for Jamaica HIV response, has given us this timeline that it will not kind of leave the country in the next 6 years. But after that, we have to really be prepared. And that's why I'm saying that it is very smart of what Jamaica government has started doing. It's not going to happen overnight. That's why it needs this big time span, you know, from 6 to 9 years to prepare and put the systems in place so that the government not only allocates more resources, because it's not only that the government has to put more resources into the budget, but it has to have the mechanisms in place to transfer these own resources to the civil society, to the community organizations.
How are you preparing for the funding fall off?
I'm going to speak as the HIV program. The Ministry of Health and Wellness has taken on the funding for testing supplies in terms of diagnosis, in terms of providing antiretroviral medication, and also in terms of monitoring tests for HIV. And people may think that's all it needs. It is not. That is just the core of it, so to speak. And a lot of times the fringes is what we need to get right so that we can get people to the core of the matter. So if you don't address stigma and discrimination, if you don't have targeted fieldwork for prevention activities, for education, if you don't have a legislative arm to ensure you have an enabling environment and human rights being addressed, then the core is just going to get only 80%, if so much, of the target that is required for us to get to our final 90-90-90 target as a country. So in terms of the fallout, as Ms. Manova said, we have started the process of social contracting, looking at it, seeing how we can engage our CSOs. But we have to look at this not just as a Ministry of Health initiative. There are different sectors. There's education, there is justice, there's labor and social security, that we have to recognize that HIV is a social disease and it is not just about health. There are other government entities that we need to look to them to see how is it they can provide funding to the partners for different avenues or aspects that our CSOs are involved in, so that when there is that fall off, be from the removal of the Global Fund grant or from our PEPFAR funders pulling out, or that whole transition process, what are our other governmental agencies able to offer so that the fringes of the response that are necessary